Hello and welcome to the F1 Downcast with my co host Tyler. I am Caolán, and it is officially Japanese Grand Prix race week. How are we doing today, Tyler?
Doing pretty good. Just got back from Colorado and Wyoming yesterday. Had a nice little trip there. It was nice because there was no Formula One this last weekend, so I didn't have to travel while also. Well, I mean, I couldn't have watched anyway. I was literally driving 24 hours back from there to Ohio, but yeah, it was good, and I'm doing good. Just a bit tired.
Yeah, not gonna lie, being able to get back to back race weeks, I was kind of missing it this week.
If I had sat at home, I would have missed the hell out of it.
Granted, we did get a lot of drama, especially the driver switch that we kind of alluded to that we thought was a potential to happen. Turns out it did happen.
And the fact that we predicted Dune being the first person to get swapped this season in the first episode, and he's still sitting in his car.
Well, technically, Lawson didn't lose his seat; he just switched, so we're not completely wrong.
I still think it's losing your seat.
Yeah, for my predictions, I'm not counting it. So we'll get
Understandable.
we'll get a little bit more into the Yuki Lawson stuff later. But first, let's get into our Japanese Grand Prix preview. And this is going to be a little bit of an interesting race because this is a track that Max is absolutely dominated at. This is a track that Max himself says is one of his favorite tracks in the world. There is a last I saw 70% chance of rain on Sunday, which could again even the odds. And in general, given that we've heard during the week Max is a little bit angry, angry Max tends to just be a better thing all around for Red Bull. So I'm very interested to see what Max Verstappen we get this week, and if there's a car that can let him be Max.
Do you think he's angry about the driver switch, about the
Well, we
car,
are
about both?
yes,
Yeah, I know he wasn't cool with Liam getting booted from the seat.
yeah. There and um, we'll get into this a little bit later too. But there was an interview with Helmut Marko that Motorsport did, and he very openly acknowledges that Max was not happy with this switch and argued in favor of Lawson and was not listened to. And I don't know. Max is a very pragmatic and smart person. If it works out for the best, Max won't care. If it doesn't work out for the best, Max is going to be mad he wasn't listened to. So Red Bull are taking a big chance with this one.
Oh, 100%.
And again, we'll dive more than that later. I have a couple of questions geared towards that to pose. And but first, what I want to know is let's do our predictions for our top three, starting first in qualifying. Who are your top three for qualifying this week?
So, quality and race are going to be different. Well, same but different. So for quali, I have Lando qualifying first, Oscar qualifying second, and Max qualifying third. Um, I think just given the last few races, it's been McLaren at the lead the entire time. I think that'll continue to carry on. Um, and it seems like Max has been qualifying a lot lower the last two races, and so I think he'll get to P3 for the qualifying. But I think McLaren will come out qualifying a lot stronger than Red Bull and Max.
Okay, that makes sense, and we agree somewhat. I have Lando in P1. I actually have Max in P2, and Oscar in P3. And my only real reason for putting Max there is I think Max found something in the last stint at China, especially in some of the medium and high speed areas, that may help him understand the car a little bit better at Suzuka, because Suzuka has a lot of those high speed sweeping corners. And this is a track, again, that Max loves. And I think, given how close things have been at times between him and Oscar, not necessarily Lando. Lando has really been good on the qualifying end of stuff, minus China, and that was more over pushing than anything. I think Lando will be comfortably top, but I think Max will edge Oscar.
Okay, so similar but different and just two positions.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What about your race? Where do you have everyone finishing in the race?
This is where it changes up a bit. So same three drivers, but I have Lando coming in third, Oscar finishing P2, and Max taking P1.
Ooh, okay, that's
He
very interesting.
he's angry. He also can drive that car better than anybody, as we'll get into later. Um, I think, and like you said just a few minutes ago, Max, when he's angry, it's a whole, like, he's a beast just in general. It's a whole different beast when he's angry. And so I think he'll take a lot of that anger that he's feeling and put it into the tires and really just and crank it out, get that P1. I think also, since McLaren's been leading the last two races, that Red Bull might, big might, with quotations or stars on the sides of it, might understand kind of how McLaren's running their strategy and might be able to kind of create ways to work around that as well.
Okay, I don't agree, but I understand the reason. So my top three is much different. Um, I have Oscar winning. I have Max in second, and I have Lewis in third.
Oh, you think Lando's gonna drop that far back?
Yes. Okay, so my reasoning is kind of simple. Lando has been over pushing. It hurt him in China, both qualifying sessions. Even though he was kind of able to make up for it in the second qualifying session in the sprint, he was not able to. He struggled to put consecutive laps together of being good. He is definitely over pushing. And I think in China was the first time since they have been teammates that Oscar showed the ability to challenge him for a championship.
I mean, that makes sense.
So you combine that with an angry Max starting, whether Max ends up second or third, starting behind him in a race that he badly wants to win, and Oscar now feeling like he has a chance to win a championship. And I think the combination of that, Lando's going to make a mistake. Now, I do have a caveat with this. This is if it's a dry race.
Yes.
If it's a wet race, then I have Max winning instead of Oscar, because Oscar is just not Max in the wet.
No, and I think McLaren, despite Australia, still struggles a bit in the wet.
And with the strategy in the wet,
Yeah.
they're not yet used to winning because of strategy.
That,
And
yeah.
I think that's something that Red Bull kind of benefited from in the like 2015 to 2021 era. Before Red Bull had a car that was competitive enough to win races routinely, the only time they would win races is when they outsmarted people. And I think that really helped them once it came to 2021 and they were competing for a title because they had so good of strategy chops already that they weren't contradicting themselves in decisions. They knew their process, they knew how they made those decisions. I don't think McLaren has quite yet got that sharp. They went from in the same season being at the very back of the grid to winning races, and they didn't have like that steady ramp up of where Red Bull was, this the second and the third team for several years. So they were used to needing strategy to get to the front, where McLaren has been such a roller coaster that their strategy development hasn't been on that same point yet. They've been able to get their pit crew to that point, which has helped them a lot. They have the only pit crew in F1 that rivals Red Bull, but they don't quite yet have the strategy element down. They're getting there, but you can still see some cracks in that.
100%. And no matter how good your car is, you're going to need strategy. Like, you're playing at the top of the grid. Like, you're not even like in fourth or third place. You're in first or second at this point. First right now, but like a good car will take you very, very far, but a lack of good strategy will completely ruin you.
Well, and you never know when it's going to be important. A great example of that, since I brought up 2021. Do you remember the Russian Grand Prix? I believe it might have been the last one where Lando was leading the race over Lewis, and it started raining with just a couple laps to go, and Lando ended up losing what could have been his first race. So what is lost in the background of that race is Max had to start at the back of the field because of an engine change, and that's the year that he was competing with Lewis for the title. During that same rain shower, his team made an incredible call that got him from mid points. I believe he was in like fifth, sixth place to second place through the rain shower. And
Yeah.
that second place ended up being massive at the end of the year. If they don't make that strategy call, Max doesn't go into the final race tied with Lewis. Then it's not a winner take all, and Max has no chance to win the championship at that point. So you never know when those strategy calls are going to be important and how much every point matters. And that's why you kind of hear, even in China, Max being happy, like, hey, we got the maximum points that we could get when they were in Australia. Maximum points we can get. He understands the importance of getting the absolute most points that you have available to
Yeah.
you. In a championship battle, you can't leave any points on, even if that means finish third when third is the best you can do, rather than finishing fifth because you bottled it.
Yeah.
Those
No, I
points are
completely agree.
incredibly important. And I mean, when you look at the point standings now, Max still has a shot because he's maximized races, where already 2 races into the year, Lando hasn't maximized every race.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. Yeah.
So now let's get into it.
Here's the main topic everybody wants to hear.
Yuki Tsunoda Liam Lawson swap at the Chinese Grand Prix. This is going to be the story of the week. There's no way around it. Everything of the Japanese Grand Prix is going to be talking about this move and analyzing it throughout the weekend. So I'll give you my first thoughts, and then we can kind of go from there.
That sounds good. Is there? I mean, I might have a rant in me. Maybe
Oh, we will have some time.
I might have a rant.
So I'll start negative, and then I want to go positive towards the end. So I have a couple points. I'll make a point, and then you can come back on my point,
Okay.
whether you agree, disagree, whatever. So my first point, and this is the furthest negative I'll go in these points, is Yuki is one on one in qualifying with a rookie teammate who is not considered even in the top two of his current rookie class. And you could argue not even the top three of his rookie class. Because I believe some people rate Behrman, Bortoletto, and Antonelli higher than him.
Kimmy is 100% higher than Hajar
Yes.
by like
And
miles.
and Bortoletto beat him head to head in the championship. Behrman,
He's doing good.
I still think coming into the year, people have let's call a spade. Even as the Red Bull fan who likes Hadron and watched him, I didn't have him in my top three of drivers. I questioned whether or not he would have a seat next year. And Yuki's one on one with him in qualifying. And could have been more because Hadger was faster than him in Australia, but had a mistake on his Q2 lap.
Yeah. I
That
mean,
doesn't feel like enough.
no, it doesn't. I mean, there's a lot of things that don't feel like enough in this whole situation. Like that's the tip of the iceberg for me personally. And like I'm very much on the side of Will Buxton in this. There was a piece of content I think I sent it to you on Instagram. And I saw a text version of it too that I thought I screenshot while I was traveling but didn't. Um, I'm very much in agreement with him, and I'll touch on that a bit when I go through my part.
So here's where I'll get a little bit positive. It's a very harsh decision, but I do think in some realms it makes sense. And again, referencing the Helmut Marko Motorsport interview. First off, just a side note, I think people need to quit. And I know I have given him as much grief as anybody because I can't stand a lot of things that he says. But I think people need to quit giving Marco the grief for this, and even Horner to a point, because these are unanimous decisions made by the entire Red Bull board. This isn't one person making a decision. The decision to appoint Lawson was unanimous. The decision to demote him was unanimous. It's not just Christian, it's not just Helmet. And it's not a competition between Christian and Helmet because they both voted the same way both times. It is a wider thing within the Red Bull family. And there can be many theories of how much of a problem that is. And a lot of people have made points of that enough to where I feel like I don't have anything new to offer that. So I'm not even going to dive into that part. But I
Yeah,
feel like people are giving Helmet a little bit too much grief because he's everyone's favorite cartoon villain.
I mean he makes himself a cartoon villain most of the time with his statements. To me,
But in fairness, he's not always wrong. F1's a harsh world, and sometimes you have to live with how harsh it is.
it just F1 is a harsh world, yes, but this for me went a bit beyond that. Like
Okay, but
I'm not against the switch entirely. I think it in put the unanimous board vote aside, put everything aside, 2 races is not enough time. And I said this in the last episode. It's just not. Like, confidence can drop. Yeah. Dude, some days I wake up and I feel like the worst person on the planet. Some days I wake up and I feel like the best person on the planet. Confident ebbs and flows, but I don't think 2 races is enough to really make that judgment call at a larger scale.
You know why I'm starting to disagree?
Why?
Because I love my data. And I saw some data going around on social channels and things like that of one of the lovely things about F1 TV is all the data that you have access to. And some of Lawson's data is pretty startling.
Okay.
And then watching the onboards that go along with that data, it's tough because you realize a lot of the problem is some of what Albin went through. And it's that, but it's at a very rapid pace. And it's probably because the car's less stable. But he, in the areas where of tracks that you need to have this immense confidence, he has nothing. Like, there are sections when you look at where he's braking, where he's doing his turning, and how he's doing it, where he's losing half a second and a corner because of his approach.
But the data goes 2 ways, right? There's the driver in the car. And like we've said, probably every single episode since the very beginning of this, Max can drive everything.
But a
If
half second and a turn, that's
well, I mean, yeah,
that's
I
a
think
lot.
that's a lot, yeah. But if you're not confident in the car you're driving because it's not stable, you're only half the problem because you don't want to die today. You know, you're going 200 miles an hour. You don't want to die.
But you're in the
And
wrong sport if that's what you think about.
I mean, that's why I'm not a Formula One driver.
That's the if you remember the interview with Christian Horner, that's the moment he stopped racing when he was on a racetrack with Juan Pablo Montoya and saw the commitment he made into a corner. He was like, "Yeah, I'll never not think about the danger of doing that. I don't belong here," and he stopped racing. There's 2 quotes from the helmet interview that I want to read to you because I thought they were really. The one thing about Helmet will always be honest. Whether you like what he says or not, the one thing you know is that he's not lying to you because he speaks his mind. And 2 of the quotes were very interesting, and I took the shortest versions of them I could. So the first one was on Liam, and then one will be on Yuki. The one on Liam was talking about he was asked why not wait till Suzuka. That's a track that Liam knows and would be more comfortable with it. And he was talking about Helmet had been talking about how it was kind of unfortunate circumstances with what happened in Australia with losing practice sessions and then it being a sprint weekend and how it made it a little bit more difficult for Liam to get on it. But he brought up Hadger, who also has not raced at China. And yes, I know it's a different car. And while some of this goes against Yuki, it does paint a little bit of a picture. And the quote is Hadger didn't know China either and was immediately on pace, almost as fast as Yuki, at least in qualifying. So it was a downward spiral that we needed to break in order to give Lawson a future in his career.
I think that's the line that really makes me feel conflicted.
See, here's the thing. People talk about Red Bull not learning a lesson. But just to play devil's advocate on this, is this them learning their Gasly and Albon lesson early?
It could be because Gasly and Albon didn't get demoted back to AlphaTauri. You
But
know,
well, but they did. Just they waited longer, even though they kind of knew that they didn't have the confidence. Which I guess Albon's a little bit unfair to say because I I still wonder if Lewis wouldn't have wrecked Albon the two times he was on target to finish well if that confidence would have then been there, especially the Brazil race, which Albon really had a chance at a second place finish, and Lewis just destroyed him. And that really hurt Albon, and I don't think he ever recovered after that. And especially in Red Bull's eyes, I don't think he ever. I think that was the race he was gone. But to a point, I wonder if this is them saying like, "Oh, this is no longer a driving problem. We've put a lot into this kid's career, and if we want to get anything out of it, we need to get him out of this situation immediately."
yeah. I mean, I get that aspect. It is very much. It is a very multifaceted situation.
Especially since Yuki's out of contract at the end of this year. If they break Yuki, it doesn't hurt them. But if
That
they
is
break
true.
Yuki and don't have Liam, it does hurt them.
That is true. That is true. Yeah.
And also, again, something to bring up from earlier this year. I think they also tinfoil hat time. If you wait till midseason to see if Yuki's good, you don't know whether you should go after George Russell.
Hmm. Yep. Because at this moment,
George still
Russell.
doesn't have a contract. If Yuki does bad in the next two races,
But then, what are you gonna do for the rest of the season?
well,
I mean, you can chase
Russell has a
George.
contract till the end of the year.
Yeah, you can chase Russell and get him for next season. But are you gonna throw away your number two driver spot for the rest of the season?
Well,
Give up the constructors.
if Yuki's not doing well, you have no options anyway.
That's true because they're not putting Hadjar in that car, and they're definitely not pulling Lindblad up just to
Yeah,
put him in a Red Bull.
yeah, not a chance. But I could see if the problem becomes a bigger deal, I could see them pulling George in.
I mean, honestly, just a far fetched pipe dream. Yuki does terrible. Pull Valtteri Bottas from his two reserve spots with McLaren and Mercedes. Throw him in a Red Bull for the rest of the season.
I think that would cost them more money than they want to spend. But
Honest, but I think Valtteri
especially
Bottas.
because Honda's giving them an extra $10 million for Yuki to be in that seat on top of the $10 million they're already giving.
That's true, and the fact that Red Bull turned it down, and then Honda's like still like wanting to do that is kind of crazy because that doesn't usually happen in business,
Well,
from
Honda's
my
desperate,
experience. That's
and
fair. That's fair.
and there was a rumor that Honda was only giving the second $10 million if he was in the seat for Japan. That's not confirmed, but rumors will be rumors.
Rumors be rumoring.
So
We need to put that on a T-shirt and sell it.
the other quote I have for you is about Yuki.
Is it from
And I
Yuki or
thought
about Yuki?
it's about Yuki again from Helmet in that interview. And I thought it was very interesting because it was about something that happened after China. And it was, we gave him 2 or 3 simulator sessions, and those were very good. Also, his technical feedback something he had been criticized for in the past, was very solid.
I'm not saying that's not true, but they tend to do this thing where they hype up their next driver, and then just as quickly as they hyped him up, honestly, twice as fast as they hyped him up, they'll turn around and say, it's not working. He's not driving the right way. He's not whatever. So I I will I will hear that statement, and I'll take it as a grain of salt, and I want to just see it play out. I want to see how it plays out.
The only reason I take it semi serious is it's because it's from Helmet, who tends to speak exactly what he thinks. It's not Christian is very political. Helmet doesn't give a shit. So when it comes from Helmet, when talked about Lawson getting the seat, a lot of what Helmet said was more on why Yuki didn't get it than why Liam did.
That is
The,
fair.
the only thing he really said was they believed in Lawson's mental strength. And fully admitting now that they are completely wrong about his mental strength, and so was I. Like, the pressure of getting your dream sometimes can crush you, especially when nothing goes right. And
Yeah.
in this case, that's exactly what happened. He
And
got
you're
the thing
going
he's
to
always wanted, and it crushed him.
and you're going 200 miles an hour at the same time as being crushed by your dream. It's not a fun place to be.
Yeah, yeah. When you imagine a worst case scenario and you would be praying for the worst case scenario compared to what's actually happening, it's probably not a good sign. But in fairness to Red Bull, this was the worst qualifying effort they've ever had. Ever. They have never had a driver qualify last in two races in a row.
True.
The entire history of their team. So this is unprecedentedly bad. And yes, the car's not great. But I do understand to a point. I still think it's harsh.
It's really hard. It's really hard
And
because
this is the
I
complexity of F1.
yeah.
This is why F1 is hard, because F1 is such a cutthroat sport. And some teams are more cutthroat than others. We gave Alpine a lot of crap for how cutthroat they have been, but it's worked.
Yeah.
And for the most part, what Red Bull does works. So
I like the for the most part. Because if we rewind a couple years ago, I don't think those same words would have came out of your mouth.
mm, it depends on what.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I think it's harsh. I can understand the logistics of it or like the business side of it. Um, and this is very much a deeply it'll vary person to person. It's very subjective. The thought process behind all of it and what you think about it. Um, but I just I would have loved to see two more Lawson races, and then I would have been a little bit. I would have been like, yeah, you know what, you're right. That's four races. Like he hasn't improved, you know. But I think the thing that really catches me is that they're two very different races, but very similar results. It's like Australia, first race of the season, always going to be some jitters, some things to overcome. But it was also a wet race, and he didn't have a great race in that. And then China was a dry race and still didn't perform. So I can see it. It's just hard to swallow knowing that. I mean, to be honest, you were a person that turned me into a Lawson fan. So, like, it sucks to see, but I am actually really grateful that he ended up just switching seats instead of not getting a seat back.
Well, let me put it to you this way. Say this wasn't Red Bull. Say any of the other rookie drivers coming in this year. Say they're qualifying over a second off of their teammate in last place. Would anyone be complaining about them being let go?
Probably not.
If Doohan was a second and a half in qualifying, slower than Gasly.
No one would complain.
If
I
if
mean, that's kind of what we expected.
if Behrman was a second and a half off Ocon, if Bortoletto was a second and a half off Nico,
But realistically, Lawson's, I guess technically, if you're going on technicalities, Lawson's not a rookie.
that makes it worse, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I see it. Yeah.
I think some of this is just because it's Red Bull. Because if you put this in any other team with a rookie driver and they have someone finishing a second off, everyone's talking about, oh dear, he shouldn't be here. We're talking about replacing Nikita Mazepin race one when he wrecked at Bahrain on the opening lap.
True. That is true.
So, as unfair as this is, and you know how much of a Liam Lawson fan I am, and I am hoping more than anything Liam Lawson qualifies fifth and just proves that it's just that car and not him. More than anyone, Liam Lawson is my second favorite driver on the grid. But I am not a blind fan.
That's fair. That's fair.
And
I'm
if it
also
was
a McLaren
any
fan,
other
so
driver, if it was any other, if Oscar had come in his rookie year and been a second and a half off Lando, we'd be saying, oh, McLaren made a mistake getting his contract from Alpine. Alpine looked like heroes in this. If any other rookie was having this bad of a performance against the teammate, we'd be questioning whether or not they belonged in the sport.
yeah.
So
Eh,
I think there is some bias in the criticism because everyone knows the Red Bull is a bit hard to drive. And because everyone knows Max is a tough teammate. But there's a lot of cars on the grid right now that aren't very good to drive. I bet you nobody is expecting the Sauber is good to drive. I know Nico doesn't like driving it, but the difference is Max isn't in the Sauber driving it to P3 and P4, so nobody cares that much. I think Max's performance is, and who Max is, and the reputation that second seat at Red Bull has is making this more of an issue than maybe it should be.
yeah, I'd agree with that. And I also like if Lawson was on a different team, there is no sister team or second seat to go back to.
Yeah, he'd just be
So
gone.
yeah, yeah.
Which I think
Well,
is why this decision might have been made as soon as it was. Though there are some other theories, and let's get into some of that. I have a little true false for you.
we missed a whole thing because I was gonna segue into who qualifies and finishes higher, Yuki or Liam.
Yes, we could do
Because
this.
because you said if Liam qualifies fourth or fifth and proves that it's just a car, I was gonna use that to segue.
I like your thinking. So, before we get into this, you reminded me of something I wanted to bring up. Yuki has been very punchy since getting
Oh,
this seat.
he overly punchy. Oh my goodness.
Yuki saying that he is targeting a podium, that the car is no problem for him to drive so far in the simulator. Targeting a podium, which Max has only done one of the two races.
I think him getting this Red Bull seat was like Viagra for his ego.
Yeah.
Is it that? I'm sorry, Yuki. That ain't happening, buddy.
So I actually love the confidence. I'm not gonna lie, but
I love the confidence. It just makes me laugh because he says all of this before he's even raced in it. I would be more I believe it way more if it wasn't based on simulator
well,
and based after one race.
he did do testing of the car at the end of last year. The car at the end of last year wasn't as bad as this one is. So,
Which makes it worse for him.
in theory, some of the simulator stuff, I don't know. Bold things to say on your first weekend in a cursed seat.
Literally like what, a few days after receiving the said seat.
Yeah, yeah. Your first public comments are, yeah, I'm targeted P3 at least. Who? I mean, if he does it, legend.
Bro, if he does that, I'm taking $50 to casino and betting on red.
Yeah. I might buy like some Yuki merch if he does that. If he calls his shot like that, more power to him. I just
I
think
think
it's risky.
I think the only person that's ever been able to call their shot like that is Kobe. So
Yeah, yeah. That's risky. That's risky. So, what you were asking, who I think qualifies higher, Liam?
same. This is a very short part of it. Yeah, same. 100%. Liam's got fire under his
I'll
ass.
even go further. I think Hadger too. I
What?
think both Racing Bulls outqualify Yuki.
Yep, 100%. And honestly, I'm not wishing for Yuki's downfall by any stretch. I'm stoked he got the seat finally. But after his comments, I kind of hope he gets humbled a little bit.
I'll even go a step further.
What if it's Hajar, Lawson, and Doohan outqualify Yuki?
I think Lawson will be within 5/10 of Max.
Ooh, I could see that. That Racing Bull's car is really, really good.
I think both Racing Bulls will be in the top 10. I don't know if Lawson will be the fastest Racing Bull,
I think
but
he might
I
be.
think both of them will be within 5/10 of Max. And I think both of them will outqualify Yuki because I don't see Yuki making Q3. I think
Me,
Yuki is out in Q2 at best.
yeah, me too. And honestly, to kind of just go back to the last conversation just for like a quick second, I think Lawson being in a Racing Bull seat might be really, really, really good for Hajar. I think Lawson would be a better teacher, a better teammate than Yuki.
Yes, I agree.
I think that'll help Hajar make a better career for himself in Formula One.
Well, and Hadjar, I think he'll relate a little bit more to Liam because they have both had different roads and a lot of being bridesmaids in championships and things like that, and like having to fight a little bit harder to get the seat.
Yeah,
I think they'll relate to each other well, and I think Lawson's going to be on a mission. I think he'll go from sad to angry really quickly, and I've watched Lawson race angry, and it's amazing.
he's got
So,
that max in him.
and I think a car that is more stable and faster in certain areas will do well for him. Uh, that car did really good in the high speed sections of China, which there's a lot of at Suzuka. And yeah, I have a lot of faith in both the Racing Bulls out qualifying Yuki.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And I kind of hope Doohan out qualifies Yuki just a little bit.
Let's not get our hopes up there. It's still the next
So,
driver to be replaced on the grid.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Doohan has done absolutely nothing to deserve staying in F1 through the first 2 weekends, and I won't be talked out of that.
No, me either. But it does seem like they're pretty.
He has more penalty points than points.
That is also true. All right. So this true false thing.
Yes. So first one. Let's go true false on a conspiracy theory. True or false? The move was made to try and avoid being below third in the constructors by the summer break, which is the speculated contract clause in Max's contract for him to leave Red Bull.
Hmm. That's hard because then knowing how like bad the car is currently, it's it's weird to say the move was the only reason that happened because you could make a move and you can suck and you're not guaranteed anything. I I would say that's more likely to be true than false.
The only reason I wonder about it being true is how much they have talked about needing Yuki to help develop the car. There seems to be a lot of talk of trying to help Max in the championship and developing the car. And right now, they wouldn't be in the same championship position they were if Ferrari didn't get a double DQ. They would be much worse off in the standings.
Yeah.
They were helped as a team by that, but they're fighting one handed in the constructors. I think the fact that there has been so much open courting from Williams or from Mercedes with their still currently open seat for next year, and some of the rumors that Mercedes has made some serious strides on next year's engine for the new regulations. I do wonder if there is that thought in the Red Bull camp of let's not let Max's contract get into the point where he can opt out. Because I don't think Mercedes would be willing to pay Max's buyout cost. Because Red Bull had to make that high. They're not stupid.
No, no.
So the only way they're getting him is if Max were to leave.
If Max triggers that exit clause, yeah.
And I do wonder if this move is to try and prevent that.
Which honestly just shows just how fragile Red Bull actually is.
Well, that's the thing about being at the top is when you're a team at the top, you're extremely fragile. Look at Mercedes. Mercedes won 8 constructors titles in the row and then kind of became the joke of the paddock the next year because they all of a sudden had this car that was a unique concept that was horrid. And it shows how quickly you can go from unbeatable to unconceivably bad. And that's
And
kind of what these new regulations are made for.
yeah. And I mean, Red Bull is at the short end of the stick because they've only had well, 4
This
drivers'
time.
championships,
Yeah.
but yeah.
So, our other true false, and we've touched on this a little bit already, but Yuki's confident remarks will either endear him to Red Bull or end his career if he performs badly.
Ooh, true. 100% true. That there is nothing more true in my day today than that. Like, yeah, I don't think I have to explain it actually. Like, it's just true.
And I think it makes his leash shorter because Christian loves himself a confident driver. He doesn't mind his drivers talking. He loves it. Red Bull love that. That they purposely don't PR train. Their drivers are allowed to say what they want for the most part.
Maybe don't name drop your former teammate in person that got the seat over you though.
But apparently they didn't give a shit. So maybe that doesn't matter.
Maybe.
Because in his interview, Helmut loved talking about how confident he was. So maybe that's another thing of Red Bull being like, oh, hey, he believes in himself. Which is why it could endear him to the team. But if he does bad,
Oh, it's
they'll
gonna
turn on him in a second.
100%. They'll put him 6 feet under this so quick.
He's definitely made the target on his back bigger,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
both in the media and because when you make comments like that, the media doesn't feel sorry for you when things go wrong.
No. Sky Sports will have a field day.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah,
And and that whole lovable character of Yuki will quickly become something else if he doesn't perform because of the things that he said leading up to this.
I am particularly excited to see how he does in the car, to see if his work ethic has changed behind the scenes. Obviously, confidence has changed a bunch,
Helmet
but
has some.
confidence.
So Helmet did make some interesting comments about how much Yuki bulked up during the off season, like muscle wise. That Yuki finally actually got into the gym and started taking care of his physical body, and
But
that was part of their changing belief in him that he showed up to start the year in much more physical shape. So he changed his management. He changed his deal with Honda. He bulked up and has a different personality this year. So he definitely in the off season realized what he was doing wasn't working. So, and I mean, look, I'll be the first to say if he goes out there and absolutely kills it,
I'll be stoked.
I'll be ecstatic because at the end of the day, I'm a Red Bull fan. I want Red Bull to win. If Yuki is winning races, Red Bull's winning races, I'm happy. I
And
want Red Bull to do good.
I'm only upset because I'm a McLaren fan, but I'm just excited to see Yuki actually win.
People have been begging for him to get the chance. Here it is. Don't blow it.
But
Don't
that is
complain about
also
how it came about, that it's short note. None of those excuses. Hey, Max jumped in a car a few races in the season and won the first race.
I just hope they're as ruthless with Yuki as they were with Lawson.
I don't think they can be because they can't bring Lawson back up and they can't put Hadger.
Why can't they bring Lawson back up?
I think they need to let him rebuild.
That's fair.
And Yuki's out of contract at the end of this year.
That's fair.
You can. It seems mean, but you can ruin Yuki and it not hurt your program. Ruining Lawson hurts their program a little bit because they were depending on having him next year when they brought Lindblad in. That was the plan. Lawson, Hadger, and Lindblad with Verstappen.
I'm gonna add a 2.1 to this, and Yuki performs well and gets the second Red Bull seat next season. True or false?
Ooh, that's tough.
Yeah, I would say false, especially if the developments with Mercedes and a contract situation with Russell doesn't take place before or during summer break, that second seat's open for Russell.
Hmm. 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 True.
Okay. I don't know how to answer that because Yuki could perform well and Red Bull could have the opportunity to sign Russell. And no matter how good Yuki does, they're still going to go for Russell. Or Mercedes finally gets their head out of their ass, seals the deal with Russell, and Yuki has a seat for next season because obviously Liam needs the time to rebuild, refocus, reconfident himself a little bit.
I still think Russell's the nuclear option because it could cost you Max.
Really? Ah, true, because they do have beef. That's true. That's true. That's true. I forgot about the beef.
I think you only bring in Russell if you think you're going to lose Max.
And so Russell would take the first seat.
Yeah. And in which
And
case, you'd
Max would just go to
probably still
Mercedes.
have Yuki.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because Max would for sure go to Mercedes because McLaren just deals with both Lando and Piastri for long term deals.
Yeah. Which I think
But
they did that on purpose, knowing because Zach Brown fully believes that Max is going to Mercedes and didn't want Red Bull throwing Max money at Oscar to get him to come over because Christian Horner is extremely high on Oscar Piastri.
bro, I honestly though, another pipe dream, Lando and Max in Papaya
That would
would
be
be
crazy.
awesome. That would be awesome.
That
That
would
would be
ruin
awesome.
Lando's career.
Oh, 100%. And I love Lando so much
There's a reason Lando didn't come to Red Bull, even though Red Bull were offering him buku bucks.
because he knows Max is a better driver.
100%. So, last of the true false. Lawson's performance versus Hadger decides both their futures, with Lindblad waiting in the wings for next year.
True. 100% true.
And I guess this somewhat depends on Yuki, but there's 4 seats and 5 drivers for Red Bull next year. Somebody's going,
Out.
and Hadger has impressed very much already. I feel like Lawson has to comprehensively beat him.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
Red Bull did invest a fortune into Lawson.
but they've
Into,
also invested a lot into Hadger. He's been with them through a Formula 3, 2 Formula 2 seasons. Like they put a lot into Hadger, and they have put a whole lot into Lindblad. They've had Lindblad since karting. And they view him as possibly their next Max.
that's fair.
So that's kind of where this year's going to be interesting now. Is for next year, everything seemed pretty settled. Lawson beside Max, Yuki's out of contract, and Honda's gone, so is he. And Lindblad comes in and fills his seat. And if Hadger doesn't perform, you have a couple other Red Bull juniors who you could throw in a seat or take a pun on Colapinto later on or something like that. Now it's not so simple because now you've moved Yuki into a situation where his contract with Honda no longer matters. Honda now is only a sponsor of him, and he's not a Honda driver, so he doesn't have to drive with a Honda engine car anymore. So when Red Bull becomes Red Bull Ford next year, there is nothing in Honda blocking that from happening. So if Tsunoda does perform, then that kind of changes things.
It does, yeah.
And even if
And
he
I
doesn't perform, is it a guarantee that Hadjar or Lawson is who's in that seat?
no, but
I
I
don't.
really,
I don't think
I
they'll
re-
risk putting Lindblad in there after what happened to Lawson.
and I don't think, at least I hope they wouldn't try to put Colapinto in that seat.
I don't think Red Bull has interest in Colapinto at all.
I think Colapinto would be great with Racing Bulls.
I just don't think they have an interest in him. In fact, one of the things in that Helmet interview that got brought up was that Helmet was seen talking to Oliver Oaks at Alpine. And what it turned out to be was Oliver Oaks is working with a team that runs one of Red Bull's drivers in F4.
Okay,
So
so it wasn't a Colapinto conversation.
no, it was a conversation about one of their junior drivers who Oliver Oaks is also involved with. And it had nothing to do with anything with Colapinto, just people putting things together, wondering. But Red Bull, at least from what Helmut has said, only had passing interest in him. Then once Brazil started, once Brazil and the rest of the season happened, they withdrew even their minor interest in him and just don't see him as that guy.
That's fair. That's fair.
And I
I
mean,
do hope Colapinto gets a seat though.
oh, he will because Doohan's going to lose his seat by probably Miami.
When is Miami on the calendar? Is that
Race
before?
5.
Oh wow. Oh yeah. It's actually that's later in the season than it was the last two. I think
Uh,
Miami was 4
no,
last two.
Miami's usually May, like mid May.
That's fair. You went to Miami, so you
Yeah,
know
yeah,
better than I did.
yeah. I think it's after Saudi because they're going. So I think it's race 6 because they're doing Japan, Bahrain, Saudi, Miami. So yeah, race 6
Okay,
because they had to move Bahrain for Ramadan. So now it's before Saudi instead of being the first race of the year.
that makes sense.
So they'll do the 2 Middle Eastern races and then go to Miami. And that was kind of the rumored spot where they would kind of make a decision about Colapinto. And from the first 2 races, Jack Doohan has done nothing but wreck and get a 10-second penalty that probably could have been a 20-second penalty with all the weaving and moving under braking.
Jack's been doing nothing.
See what you did
there. I couldn't resist.
Now the question is, who's going to finish higher, Yuki or Doohan?
Yuki for sure.
This is going to be one of the more interesting things to watch, is because I feel like Yuki's put a pressure on himself that he didn't need. Because coming into this weekend, if Yuki even cracked the top 10, it would be considered a win.
I think if Yuki
But
cracked,
his mouth has kind of now wrote a check that anything out of the top five is a failure.
yeah, yeah. Here's a off the cuff question. Do you think Doohan misses a race due to penalty points first, or gets booted from his seat first?
Oh, he won't be here long enough to get that many penalty points. If Doohan
I don't
makes it
know.
3 more races, I'm going to be shocked.
I mean, well, we're on Monday of race week, so there's a lot of time for things to be discussed, but there has been nothing that signifies that they're thinking about it. I mean, he was the hottest topic coming into the season, saying, "Oh, he's not going to last." Everybody was making bets that he wouldn't make it past the first race.
Well, and as I said last week, the happiest person in the F1 paddock right now that Lawson has been terrible and lost his seat is Doohan. Because if it wasn't for Lawson's performances, we'd be talking about how bad Doohan was.
That is true, actually. That is true.
Lawson has probably gotten him more time. Honestly, if I was Alpine, I would be
Get rid
making
of
the
him now.
switch.
Get him out now.
That's the switch that would have been announced this week if I'm an Alpine, because I have seen absolutely zero from Jack Toohan that doesn't look like he's another Nikita Mazepin Mick Schumacher. A kid with a bunch of money and minimal talent.
I feel like Mick's got some talent, though.
I don't.
Some talent,
You know
not
why I
a
don't?
lot of
Because he's
talent.
done so many test sessions in so many different series, and no one seems to want him,
That touche to that.
including endurance racing, where he's done a bunch of test sessions and no one really seems to care that much.
Well, I mean, he does have an endurance seat, or he
Yeah,
has
but
some type of seat.
what's he even doing now? Because I know he was struggling to get an endurance seat for a while because he had done some testing and it didn't go well. And then I know Total Wolf was basically begging people.
Magnuson's also got an endurance seat from the last I saw.
Yeah. He is driving for Alpine, it looks like.
Mick Schumacher.
Yeah. And WEC.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's driving for Alpine.
His best finish was 22nd.
Out of how many cars?
A lot. But, I mean, 22nd in a hypercar basically means you're terrible.
That is fair.
So, yeah. Which, I mean, I feel bad for him, but at the same time, perform or don't. Yeah,
I mean, it looks
his
like.
only race he finished 13th this year, and there's not a ton of hypercars. So,
I mean, it looks like he was a part of the podium team for Alpine in September of last year. First podium hypercar for Alpine in Fuji.
all right, so he had one.
I see.
Yeah, this year, the first race of the year, they finished 13th. But that being said, like that's the easier of the series to get into, and nobody in F1 has wanted Mick Schumacher,
That's very true.
and he was an F2 champion. Doohan just in F2 there was nothing in F2 that made me believe he was that good. He had his days where he could be fast, but he was very inconsistent and just I know it's harsh, but he reminded me of how Nikita was in F2 with maybe slightly less attitude. Which, funny enough, Yuki Tsunoda was involved in one of Nikita's worst incidents in F2, where he got a penalty for running Yuki off the track and got mad about it and ran into the P2 sign and almost hit Yuki with it and got a further penalty for it. But
Yeah.
this will be a very interesting race weekend because I feel like there are several storylines going into it within every team. You have Ferrari trying to figure out what's going on at Ferrari in general, not just the DQs, but it seems like their car is wildly inconsistent. It can be really fast, but it's inconsistent. McLaren, who's the actual title contender in McLaren right now? Because this looks very much like Rosberg versus Hamilton 2016, where you have the teammate who is obviously faster, but makes more mistakes and opens the championship up to his teammate. And whether or not Lando can get rid of that part of him that keeps making these mistakes.
Yeah.
And then you have Red Bull. What the hell's going on with Red Bull? Can they figure out a window with this car? When can they bring updates? Did the emergency meeting with Max and his engineers that supposedly went good provide any clarity that can be used immediately, or was that all down the road clarity? And can Yuki take whatever they're seeing in the simulator that seems to be really impressive and do something with it on track?
Yeah.
And that's what's going to make this so fun is there are so many unknowns. And a bonus last thing before we get off here. Can we talk about the abundantly beautiful Haas car?
Oh my goodness. It's so beautiful.
Haas may have just won the best one-off livery ever.
Yes, it is
That is
gorgeous.
one of my favorite liveries I have ever seen in my life as an F1 fan.
I'm going to look at it again just because it's
With the Haas and the different writing and colors and the way they did the numbers, and, everything about that car is incredibly beautiful. And I
so
know Red
beautiful.
Bull's gonna run there, which is gonna be kind of awkward and gonna be hard to tell them apart from the Racing Bulls. But Red Bull's running their Honda livery.
Yeah.
That's gonna that's gonna be a little bit hard on the track. I hope there's
But
enough
like
differentiation.
oh, it's just so beautiful.
Yeah, it really is. That's what I love. How they did the side pods and the
Yep.
changing the color. Oh, it's just
And like the cherry blossoms everywhere. Oh,
it's supposedly, I guess, F1 is going there this year at the absolute height of cherry blossom season. So everything is going to be perfectly bloomed. It's going to be beautiful. I mean, it is one of the best races of the year. It may not be the best track for racing, but it's one of the best tracks on the calendar to just watch the cars be cars. And it's a race I always love. I always hate it when it rains there, and I'm hoping it doesn't rain. The Jules Bianchi flashbacks every time there's rain in Japan. Um, if you get a chance to check out Callum Nicholas's book, there's a
okay.
set. He worked for Marussia when Jules crashed and was, a Marussia driver, and there is a section in there about the accident, about the toll that took on it. It's a painful read, but and he doesn't spend too much time on it because, as he mentions in the book, it's just something he still to this day doesn't like talking about. And every time he was in Japan and it would rain, it would be a very tough time for him. That was the first and only time he ever worked on a car where somebody was seriously injured, and in this case, killed. So that's a horrible thing to go through.
Yeah.
And so anytime there is rain in Japan, there is that sadness a little bit, where that's the first thought that comes to your mind. But it really is. It's a beautiful track, but it can be a dangerous track, and I feel that's the case with a lot of the great tracks. Is a lot of the great tracks have that element of danger.
100%. Yeah.
And I'm just excited for this race weekend. I can't wait to see what happens. There's so many things up in the air, and that's the best kind of F1 season to have. To go
Yeah.
into a race weekend and only have a small idea of what might happen. Like, we can't even fully agree on who's going to win the race. We
Yeah.
think we know who's going to win the race, but there are circumstances that could change that. And I mean, we could be completely wrong and this be a Ferrari strong track where they showed what they showed in the sprint race, and Ferrari wins this. The team that we're kind of discounting because
And
they've been
honestly,
fast.
it makes me so excited because it's not like, oh, Max is going to win another race. Because that's been the last 4 seasons. The last 2 particularly. But
I'm not gonna lie.
uh,
2013 was my favorite season to be an F1 fan in my entire life.
fair.
My favorite team won all but one of the races, and it was amazing.
You mean 2023, not 2013. But yeah.
Oh, did I say 13? My bad.
Yeah. You're good. I got what you said.
that I know people say they like closer. Let me tell you, as a fan, 2023 was amazing. I just turned on every race and was just like, "Hey, we're gonna win this week."
You didn't even have to turn on the race. You just knew.
Oh, but I didn't miss a session because I knew how rare what was going on was, and that it's probably something we'll never see again. So I wanted to make sure I took up every moment of that because usually when a team's that dominant, things change very quickly to make sure they're never that dominant again, and you get a season like this.
Different sport, but the Cavs are looking really great this year, and it's probably not going to look the same next year. I mean, we're the best in the NBA, so.
Ohio sports time. But at least 2 of our 3 teams are good.
Truth. Well, actually, the crew too, so.
I don't count
Yeah.
them.
Oh, I do.
I don't. I don't count anything MLS, but we won't get to that. That's a whole another discussion for another whole form of hatred.
If we get big enough, maybe we can do an MLS hatred podcast.
Other people just call that a soccer podcast.
Touche. That was good. Well played, sir.
That sounds like a wonderful time to end this week's episode. We will see you back again, once again, next Wednesday, where we go over whatever crazy results happen this weekend. And I'm sure we're going to have a lot of opinions on the action and how it plays out. Look forward to talking through it all and observing what happens this weekend.
Yeah, same here. Can't wait to talk to you guys again.
Have a great weekend, everybody, and enjoy the Japanese Grand Prix. We will see you next Wednesday on the F1 Downcast.